In recent years, many RTS game developers have tried to sell us esports strategies, competitive multiplayer, perfect balance, tournament potential, but in 100% of cases, these games failed right at launch. Why do people watch StarCraft, Warcraft and Age of Empires en masse, but deep down still dislike esports-focused games? Let's figure it out. The whole trend of developing games with competitive multiplayer really started after 2010, following the commercial success of StarCraft 2. It was the first strategy game that gathered a huge audience at that time on platforms like Justin TV, which later would be known as Twitch. Players were earning high salaries and thousands of fans watched their streams. Even 15 years later, and despite StarCraft 2 decline, the game remains one of the most played RTS games with high online activity for this genre. This situation created a false and dangerous illusion for many developers. They believed that if they made a strategy game with competitive multiplayer, players would stick with it for years, buying paid skins and other monetized content. This model worked well in other genres and games, like Dota or League of Legends for example, but that was far from reality. The first game to try replicating StarCraft 2's success failed at launch. It was Grey Goo. You have probably barely heard of it, but it was an expensive project by an experienced team who had previously worked on the magnificent Star Wars Empire at War. Yet the game was bland, boring, and even its balanced multiplayer didn't appeal to anyone. It just wasn't interesting enough to the majority of players. 10 years later, the same exact story happened with Stormgate. Even with consultations from pro players and support from the majority of StarCraft 2 streamers and influencers, it didn't really help. And the issue wasn't just that many games today release half-baked and buggy. The problem lies in the very concept of an esports RTS. This kind of games simply aren't needed, and the few successful ones are exceptions rather than the rule. The first major issue with such games is the literal ban on everything fun in multiplayer. Every esports RTS must ensure equal opportunities among races or factions, meaning win rates need to hover around 50% for each. Achieving this requires huge sacrifices. For example, did you know what the Protoss mothership from StarCraft 2 was originally like? It was really huge and powerful. It could warp matter nearby, you could stop missiles, fire multiple lasers at once, and even turn enemy fleets into 2D models with vortex. Obviously, it was far too powerful to be competitive, so Blizzard nerfed it into a much weaker version. It could now only cloak allies and recall armies, and then get yoinked by Vipers. All that power and all that fun was stripped away. And that's the core problem for all esports RTS games. In pursuit of balance, developers must limit players' arsenals, making them weaker, more predictable and frankly boring. It's impossible to balance 15 powerful, over-the-top units, so amazing and crazy concepts often get trimmed down into something multiplayer compatible. Remember Red Alert 2 and its awesome units. They were insanely powerful, but also broken. But do you know what's really ironic? The multiplayer in that game was garbage. Most matches devolved into tank or engineer rushes, and they were not really that interesting to watch. Many players never even got to use the iconic units like Kirov Airship or Yuri's Army and many other cool units from Allied faction as well. The very reason we love the game basically. But despite the weird balance, the game wasn't hated. Quite the opposite actually. People enjoyed the crazy overpowered options and they played a lot in multiplayer, even though it wasn't probably as balanced as it should be. And you even didn't need to play hardcore 1v1 to enjoy all of the potential of this game. You could play team matches or you can play against bots. Fun strategies worked in other modes too. Interestingly, Red Alert 3 was designed as an esports RTS, hence the economic shift. No more ore fields, just fixed resource points, plus every unit had an ability or alternate fire mode, increasing micromanagement potential. And honestly, Red Alert 3 plays much better in terms of balance. But ironically, viewers and players don't really care about balance as much as we would like, and they don't really enjoy high skill and tense 1v1 matches. What they love are massive battles with dozens of heroes, or mods like Remix, where each faction gets ton of broken tech, like Soviet Steel Fortress or Zeus Airship, or many other units that are just really adorable, and all those units and interactions make the game really spectacular to watch. In other words, more people prefer explosions and fun over who's got better micro. Sometimes even a well-balanced concept just isn't useful in real gameplay. This happened a lot in StarCraft 2. Take the earlier version of the Infestor, for example. Did you know it was originally meant to sneak onto enemy bases, infect buildings, and then spawn zombies from them? Imagine how epic that would have been in a 1 in a million match. For example, the Terran loses everything but still has to fight his own zombified friends. That would be a legendary moment, even though it probably would almost never happen on a pro scene, but still. But in practice, sneaking in was obviously too hard, so the idea was scrapped for being too impractical. And these are just a few examples, but they all show the same thing. Strict balance often makes gameplay less fun. You might argue, so what? Should multiplayer just stay on balance? Well, actually, there is another answer. We just need to look at what players really want. Second problem with esports RTS games is the focus on esports, despite the fact that the vast majority of RTS players actually love this single player part of the game. Giant Grand Games once did research and found out that most RTS players prefer exactly these modes. They don't really play as much online. And same goes for my viewers and myself. I would guess that many RTS players don't even play multiplayer maybe like once a week or so. They just enjoy watching it on Twitch or YouTube, and even that, it's not always guaranteed. The real passion is in single player, the campaign, the lore, the memes, the units, and just the flavor. If the single player is boring, bland, and soulless, it paints the whole game in the same dull color. That's what happened with Grey Goo. Like its name, the game was a grey, shapeless blob that just felt boring. This also explains why esports in StarCraft and Warcraft are still so popular. Both games have an incredibly strong foundation in their legendary campaigns, iconic characters, lore, memes, and units that we first met there. But when the focus is exclusively on multiplayer, the campaign becomes an afterthought. Instead of a real story and cool missions, we get an extended tutorial to help us to get used to this game, and by the time it ends, we've just lost interest. Take Stormgate again. It was supposed to be the next big AAA esports RTS, and its multiplayer honestly isn't bad, gameplay-wise. But everything else was awful, especially the campaign, the weakest part, with dull characters and a story half-copied from Warcraft 3. In the latest patch though, the devs rewrote the story, updated visuals, animations and missions, and added a new upgrade system. And suddenly, the reviews started improving and players are warming up to it. They are more interested in the game now. The last problem for esports RTS games is that they raise the skill bar too high for most players. And many people dismiss StarCraft 2 as a clicker or APM grind, not a real strategy game. While it's obviously unfair, there is some truth in it. Most esports RTS games are just too fast-paced for casuals, and maybe that's why Age of Empires 4 is actually doing quite well, because it's slower, it's more methodical, and maybe even relaxing. You just build a base, develop your little town, enjoy watching your peasants work, and then go to fight, occasionally. And let's not forget about the penalty for mistakes. It's really huge. There is nothing fun about sweating for 10 minutes and then losing everything in 2 seconds because of one stupid mistake. That's true for most RTS games though, but esports RTS games push this to the extreme. Another problem is action. You know, victories often come not from nukes or epic units, but from micro advantages or just, tiny build order details, just, minuscule things that make a difference. For example, one player builds things slightly better in a right order, or he micros slightly faster, just slowly snowballing to victory. And that's not very exciting to watch, at least for some people. Though obviously it does have beauty and depth for us true RTS fans. And that's why Giant Grand Games was 100% right. Until a game comes along with a strong single player and fun content aimed at casuals, we won't really see a new esports RTS hit it big. But there is no rush really, because StarCraft 2 still has tournaments lined up at least until 2026, and Warcraft 3 and Age of Empires are doing fine. And it's easy to understand why. Esports is born, not made. You can't put a cart before the horse. If you're lucky, your game will get a huge following, and if not, it will be at least a good one-time product. Like Tempest Rising, for example, it has lots of potential for esports, but aside from that, it's an exciting, nostalgia-inducing journey when it comes to its campaigns. And that's all for today. That's the end of my mini essay about esports games. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the videos on our channel, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Good luck and see you next time.